There comes a moment in everyone's life when they find themselves staring at a problem that seems impossible to overcome. Maybe it's financial stress. Maybe it's heartbreak. Maybe it's failure. Maybe it's a dream that feels further away today than it did yesterday. At first, the problem appears small, but then something strange happens. The more attention you give it, the bigger it becomes. The more you think about it, the heavier it feels.
The more you focus on what's wrong, the less energy you have to create what's right. And before you know it, the problem isn't just part of your life. It becomes your entire life. Psychologists call this negative fixation. It's the tendency of the human mind to focus more on threats than opportunities. Thousands of years ago, this helped our ancestors survive. The person who noticed danger was more likely to stay alive than the person who focused on beauty. But in today's world, this survival mechanism often works against us. Instead of protecting us, it traps us. Instead of helping us grow, it keeps us stuck. Think about it. Have you ever spent hours worrying about something? Maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe even years. And after all that worrying, what changed? Did the problem disappear? Did the stress solve anything? Did anxiety create a solution? Of course not. Because problems are rarely solved by staring at them. They're solved by focusing on what can be done next. One of the most powerful lessons from psychology is this: your mind moves in the direction of your focus. If you focus on obstacles, you'll see obstacles everywhere. If you focus on solutions, your brain begins searching for possibilities.
This isn't positive thinking. It's neuroscience. Your brain has a filtering system called the reticular activating system. This system determines what information receives your attention. When you buy a new car, suddenly you notice that same car everywhere. Not because it suddenly appeared, because your brain started looking for it. The same thing happens with problems. When you focus on everything that's wrong, your brain finds more evidence that things are wrong. When you focus on solutions, your brain starts identifying opportunities. The world hasn't changed. Your focus has. And that changes everything. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, there were two farmers living side by side. Both experienced the same drought. Both lost crops. Both faced uncertainty. Both had families depending on them. The first farmer spent every day complaining. He talked endlessly about how unfair life was. He blamed the weather. He blamed fate. He blamed everyone. Every conversation centered around the problem. Every thought returned to the problem. Every day became an endless cycle of frustration. The second farmer saw the same drought. He felt the same fear. He experienced the same losses. But he asked a different question. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can I do now?" He studied irrigation methods. He searched for alternative crops. He worked with neighboring farmers. He experimented with new ideas. Months later, neither farmer had escaped hardship, but one had created possibilities, while the other had created excuses. One focused on solutions. The other focused on problems. And eventually, their lives reflected their focus. This is one of the greatest truths you'll ever learn. The quality of your life depends less on the problems you face and more on the focus you choose. Because everyone has problems. Successful people have problems. Millionaires have problems. Athletes have problems. Entrepreneurs have problems. Authors have problems. Leaders have problems. The difference is not the absence of problems. The difference is their response. Average people ask, "Why is this happening?" Successful people ask, "What can I do about it?" Average people search for someone to blame. Successful people search for a solution. Average people become emotionally attached to their struggles. Successful people become committed to progress. And that commitment changes everything. One day, a young man visited an old mentor. He was frustrated, exhausted, defeated. He said, "My life is full of problems." The mentor listened quietly, then handed him a glass of water. The mentor placed a handful of salt into the glass and told the young man to drink it. The young man took a sip and immediately spit it out. "It's terrible," he said. The mentor smiled. Then they walked to a nearby lake. The mentor threw the same amount of salt into the water. "Now, drink." The young man drank. The water tasted fresh. The mentor said, "The pain in life is like salt. The amount is often similar for everyone, but the bitterness depends on the container. If your mind becomes a tiny glass, every problem feels overwhelming. If your perspective becomes a lake, the same problem loses its power." The lesson is simple. Don't spend your life enlarging your problems. Enlarge your perspective. Enlarge your creativity. Enlarge your capacity to find solutions. Because every minute spent obsessing over the problem is a minute stolen from the solution. And here's something most people never realize. The solution rarely appears all at once. It usually appears one small step at a time. One phone call. One decision. One conversation. One new habit. One courageous action. Many people wait until they can see the entire path, but progress doesn't work that way. You only need to see the next step. Imagine driving at night. Your headlights may illuminate only a few hundred feet ahead, yet you can travel hundreds of miles. Why? Because each section of light reveals the next section. Life works the same way. Solutions emerge through movement, not through endless worrying, not through overthinking, not through fear, through action. Action creates clarity. Action creates momentum. Action creates opportunity. And momentum is powerful. A small snowball rolling down a mountain becomes unstoppable because it keeps moving. The same is true for you. Every solution starts small. Every transformation starts small. Every success starts small. The person you admire today was once confused. The entrepreneur was once broke. The athlete was once weak. The leader was once uncertain. The author once faced a blank page. The difference is they refused to let problems become permanent identities. They understood something profound. Problems are events. They are not who you are. Failure is an event. It is not your identity. Loss is an event. It is not your identity. Rejection is an event. It is not your identity. Your circumstances may describe your situation, but they do not define your future. The moment you stop identifying with the problem, you regain the power to solve it. And that power has been inside you all along. Today, make a decision. Stop feeding the problem. Start
defeating the solution. Stop asking why life is difficult. Start asking what action you can take. Stop counting obstacles. Start counting opportunities. Stop rehearsing your fears. Start rehearsing your possibilities. Because your future is not created by the problems you face. Your future is created by the solutions you pursue. And the moment your focus changes, your life begins to change with it.
Part 2. The power of a solution-oriented mindset. Imagine two people standing in the middle of a storm. The wind is violent. The rain is relentless. The sky is dark. Both people experience the exact same storm. Yet one of them spends all day cursing the weather. The other begins building a shelter. One focuses on the storm. The other focuses on what can be built despite the storm. Years later, their lives look completely different. Not because they faced different challenges, but because they developed different habits of thinking. This is one of the most important principles in self-improvement. You become what you repeatedly focus on. Every thought is a seed. Every focus creates direction. Every repeated mental habit becomes part of your identity. If you constantly focus on limitations, your mind becomes trained to find limitations. If you constantly focus on possibilities, your mind becomes trained to find possibilities. This principle appears again and again in psychology research. People who develop resilience are not people who avoid difficulties. They are people who learn to interpret difficulties differently. They don't ask, why does this always happen to me? Instead, they ask, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift changes everything.
Because questions control focus, and focus controls action. Most people never realize how much their questions shape their lives. When something goes wrong, they ask questions like, why am I unlucky? Why am I failing? Why does nobody support me? Why is life unfair? The brain immediately begins searching for answers, and because the brain is obedient, it finds evidence. Soon it says, you're unlucky because things never work out. You're failing because you're not talented enough. Nobody supports you because nobody cares. Life is unfair because bad things happen. The problem grows larger. Confidence shrinks. Motivation disappears. Action stops.
But imagine asking different questions. What can I learn from this? What opportunities still exist? What is one thing I can improve today? Who can help me solve this? What step can I take right now? Notice how these questions force the brain to search in a completely different direction. Suddenly, possibilities appear. Resources appear. Ideas appear. Solutions appear. The situation may not change immediately, but your relationship with the situation changes instantly. And that changes everything. There's a famous story about a shoe company that sent two salesmen to a remote region. After arriving, the first salesman sent a message back to headquarters. He wrote, "No opportunity here. Nobody wears shoes yet." A few minutes later, the second salesman sent his report. He wrote, "Huge opportunity here. Nobody wears shoes yet." Same place, same facts, different focus. One saw a problem, the other saw potential. One saw limitations, the other saw possibilities. And that's how life works. The opportunities around you are often invisible until you train yourself to look for them. Most people are experts at finding reasons something won't work. Very few become experts at finding ways it can work. That difference separates dreamers from achievers. Years ago, A young woman dreamed of starting her own business. She had no wealthy family, no investors, no special connections. Every time she shared her dream, people reminded her of the obstacles. You don't have enough money. The economy is difficult. Competition is everywhere. What if you fail? For a while, she believed them. Every day she focused on what she lacked: money, experience, support, resources, without. And because her attention remained on the obstacles, she stayed frozen. Months passed. Nothing changed. Then one day, she discovered a powerful truth. She didn't need every answer. She only needed the next answer. She didn't need all the resources. She only needed the resources required for the next step. She didn't need certainty. She needed courage. So she stopped asking, how will I build a successful company? And started asking, how can I find my first customer? That one question changed her life. Because large goals become manageable when broken into small solutions. The mountain becomes climbable when you focus on the next step instead of the summit. This principle applies to every area of life. If you're overwhelmed by debt, focus on the next payment. If you're struggling with health, focus on the next healthy choice. If your relationship is suffering, focus on the next meaningful conversation. If your career feels stuck, focus on the next skill you can develop. Solutions grow through consistent action, not through perfect plans, not through endless analysis, not through waiting for motivation. Action comes first. Motivation follows. Many people wait until they feel inspired before they act. Successful people understand the opposite. Action creates inspiration. Action creates confidence. Action creates momentum. Think about a train. When it sits still, moving it requires tremendous energy. But once it starts rolling, momentum takes over. The same thing happens in life. The hardest part is often beginning. That's why so many people remain trapped inside problems. They are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, the perfect opportunity, the perfect confidence. But perfection never arrives. And while they wait, life moves forward without them. Meanwhile, solution-focused people understand something important. Progress beats perfection every single time. A small solution today is worth more than a perfect solution that never happens. A tiny improvement is better than endless planning. One step forward is better than standing still. Every great achievement in history started with imperfect action. Every business, every invention, every movement, every transformation. Someone decided to move before they felt completely ready. Because readiness is often created through action, not before it. Psychologist Carol Dweck spent years studying successful people and discovered a pattern. The most successful individuals developed what she called a growth mindset. They viewed challenges differently. When they failed, they didn't see proof of inadequacy. They saw feedback. When they encountered obstacles, they didn't see dead ends. They saw lessons. When things became difficult, they didn't assume they should quit. They assumed they needed a new strategy. This is exactly what solution-focused thinking looks like. It's not blind optimism. It's practical optimism. It's the belief that even when something isn't working, a better approach can be found. And that's a powerful belief because it keeps you moving. Life rewards movement. Not excuses, not complaints, not endless worrying. Movement. Imagine a ship crossing the ocean. Storms will come. Waves will rise. The wind will change direction. No captain wastes time screaming at the weather. The captain adjusts the sails.
That's what solution-focused people do. They adapt, they adjust, they continue forward. They understand that life rarely gives complete control over circumstances, but it always gives control over response. And response is where power lives. The next time you face a challenge, remember this. You cannot solve tomorrow's problems with today's fear. You solve them with today's actions. Not tomorrow, not someday. Today. One action, one improvement, one decision, one solution.
That is enough. Because small solutions compound, just like small problems compound. Every positive choice strengthens your confidence. Every solution increases your belief in yourself. Every victory, no matter how small, teaches your brain that progress is possible. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You start seeing yourself as a creator of outcomes. And that shift changes your entire future. The world belongs to people who focus on what can be done, not those who endlessly discuss what cannot. The greatest opportunities often hide behind difficult problems. The greatest growth often emerges from painful challenges. The greatest transformations often begin with moments of uncertainty. What matters is not the obstacle in front of you.
What matters is the question you ask next. Will you focus on the problem, or will you focus on the solution? Because whichever one receives your attention will grow, and whichever one grows will shape your destiny. So today, choose carefully. Choose progress over excuses. Choose action over fear. Choose possibilities over limitations. Choose solutions over problems. And watch how your life begins to transform, one decision at a time. Part 3. The Day Everything Changed. There was once a young man who believed his life was over before it had truly begun. At 25 years old, he had lost his job. His savings were gone. His friends seemed to be moving ahead while he felt stuck in place. Every morning, he woke up with a heavy feeling in his chest. Every night, he went to bed replaying the same thoughts. Why me? Why is this happening? What if I never recover? What if I never succeed? The questions repeated endlessly, like a broken record, like a prison he carried inside his own mind. The strange thing was that his situation wasn't improving, but neither was it getting worse. What was getting worse was his focus. Day after day, he fed his attention to the problem. And the more attention he gave it, the larger it became. Soon, he wasn't simply unemployed. In his mind, he was a failure. He wasn't temporarily struggling. He believed he was permanently defeated. And that's what happens when we stare at problems for too long. We begin confusing circumstances with identity. We begin believing that what happened to us is who we are. But one afternoon, something unexpected occurred. The young man visited an older relative he deeply respected. After listening quietly for nearly an hour, the older man asked a simple question. "What are you doing every day?" The young man looked confused. "What do you mean?" The older man repeated the question. "What are you doing every day?" The young man thought for a moment. "Worrying." The older man nodded. "And how is that working?" Silence. For the first time, the young man realized something. He had spent months thinking about his problems,
but almost no time working on solutions. He had become an expert on everything that was wrong. Yet he knew very little about what he could do next. That realization changed his life. Not instantly, not magically, but permanently. The next morning, he decided to do something different. Instead of spending hours worrying, he dedicated 1 hour to finding solutions. Just 1 hour. He updated his resume. The following day, he learned a new skill online. The next day, he reached out to former colleagues. The day after that, he applied for opportunities he previously thought were beyond his reach. Small actions. Tiny actions. Actions that seemed insignificant at the time. But something powerful began happening. His confidence slowly returned. Not because he had solved everything, but because he was moving. And movement creates hope. Hope is not created by wishing. Hope is created by action. Every step forward became proof that he wasn't powerless. Every solution reminded him that progress was possible. Months later, he found a better opportunity than the one he had lost. Years later, he would look back and realize that losing his job had forced him to become someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more resilient. The experience he once called a disaster eventually became the turning point of his life. And maybe that's true for many of the challenges you face right now. Perhaps the obstacle you're fighting today is preparing you for a future you can't yet see. Perhaps the setback isn't destroying your path. Perhaps it's redirecting it. Because some of life's greatest gifts arrive disguised as problems. Think about a seed. Before it becomes a tree, it must disappear beneath the soil. From the outside, it looks buried, lost, forgotten. Someone more resilient. The experience he once called a disaster eventually became the turning point of his life. And maybe that's true for many of the challenges you face right now. Perhaps the obstacle you're fighting today is preparing you for a future you can't yet see. Perhaps the setback isn't destroying your path. Perhaps it's redirecting it. Because some of life's greatest gifts arrive disguised as problems. Think about a seed. Before it becomes a tree, it must disappear beneath the soil. From the outside, it looks buried, lost, forgotten. But underneath the surface, growth is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is developing. Preparation is taking place. Your life may feel like that right now. You may feel buried beneath difficulties. But buried is not the same as defeated. Buried seeds grow, and so can you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that successful individuals never experience setbacks. The truth is exactly the opposite. Every successful person has faced failure. The difference is they learned how to respond. Consider the story of a young athlete. For years, he dreamed of competing at the highest level. He trained before sunrise. He practiced while others rested. He sacrificed comfort for growth. Then came the biggest competition of his life, and he lost. Not by a little, by a lot. He was embarrassed, humiliated, devastated. For weeks, he replayed the failure in his mind. Every mistake, every missed opportunity, every moment that went wrong. The problem consumed him. Eventually, his coach sat him down and asked a question he would never forget. Are you studying the loss or living inside it? The athlete paused. The coach continued. There's a difference. If you study failure, it teaches you. If you live inside failure, it destroys you. That lesson transformed his career. Instead of focusing on the pain, he focused on the information. Instead of dwelling on mistakes, he searched for adjustments. Instead of asking why he lost, he asked how he could improve. Months later, he returned stronger. Years later, he became a champion. Not because he avoided failure, because he learned from it. And that's what solution-focused thinking really means. It means treating problems as teachers instead of enemies. Every challenge contains information. Every obstacle contains lessons. Every setback contains feedback, but only if you're willing to look for it. Most people see a closed door and stop walking. Solution-focused people look for another entrance, or a window, or a key, or a completely different path. They understand that obstacles are not instructions to quit. They are invitations to think differently. Psychologists often talk about something called learned helplessness. This occurs when people experience repeated difficulties and eventually convince themselves that nothing they do matters. They stop trying. They stop believing. They stop acting. Not because success is impossible, but because they have lost faith in their ability to influence outcomes. This mental trap destroys more dreams than failure ever could, because failure still contains possibility. Helplessness contains surrender, and surrender is where potential goes to die. The good news is that learned helplessness can be reversed. How? By taking action. Even small action. Especially small action. Every time you solve a problem, your brain receives evidence that you are capable. Every challenge you overcome strengthens your confidence. Every obstacle you face successfully rewires your expectations about the future. This is why momentum matters so much. Confidence is not built by thinking about success. Confidence is built by experiencing progress. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself, by taking action when you don't feel like it, by continuing when quitting would be easier, by proving to yourself, one day at a time, that you can handle more than you once believed. Remember this, you do not need to have all the answers. You only need enough courage to take the next step. You do not need certainty. You need commitment. You do not need perfect conditions. You need consistent effort. The future belongs to people who keep moving, people who keep learning, people who keep adapting, people who refuse to let temporary problems become permanent identities. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is facing a challenge greater than yours and still moving forward. Part 4. The moment you take back control. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must make a choice that nobody else can make for them, a choice between remaining trapped by circumstances or rising above them, a choice between becoming a victim of problems or becoming a creator of solutions. Most people never realize how powerful this decision is, because from the outside, nothing changes immediately. The bills may still be there. The obstacles may still exist. The uncertainty may remain. But internally, everything changes. Because the moment you decide to focus on solutions, you take back control of your life. And control is one of the most powerful psychological forces in the world. Human beings can endure extraordinary difficulty when they believe their actions matter. History proves this. People have survived wars, economic collapse, heartbreak, illness, loss, failure, rejection. Not because these experiences were easy, but because they refused to surrender their belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That belief creates resilience. And resilience creates transformation. Think about the greatest stories you've ever heard. The heroes never begin their journey strong. They begin challenged, confused, afraid, uncertain. The struggle is what makes the story meaningful. Without obstacles, there is no growth. Without resistance, there is no strength. Without challenges, there is no transformation. Your life is no different. The difficulties you're facing today may be shaping the strongest version of yourself, but only if you choose to engage with them correctly.
Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. The metal enters the fire. It faces intense heat, pressure, hammer strikes. From the metal's perspective, everything seems painful. But the blacksmith sees something different. He sees creation. He sees refinement. He sees strength emerging. Life often works the same way. What feels like punishment may actually be preparation. What feels like destruction may actually be construction.
What feels like an ending may actually be a beginning. Many self-improvement experts share a common message. Your greatest growth usually happens during your greatest challenges. Not because challenges are enjoyable, but because challenges force adaptation. They force creativity. They force action. They force growth. And growth changes everything. One day, an old teacher wrote 2 words on a board. Problem. Opportunity. Then he asked his students a question. What is the difference? The students offered many answers. Some said one was negative, while the other was positive. Some said one creates pain, while the other creates progress. The teacher smiled and shook his head. The difference, he said, is often perspective. A problem viewed correctly can become an opportunity. A setback can become a lesson. A failure can become feedback. A rejection can become redirection. A difficulty can become strength. The event itself matters less than the meaning you assign to it. And that realization is incredibly empowering. Because while you cannot always control events, you can control interpretation. You can choose what something means. You can choose how you respond. You can choose where your focus goes. And where focus goes, energy flows. Think about all the energy people waste every day. Hours spent complaining, hours spent worrying, hours spent replaying mistakes, hours spent imagining worst-case scenarios. What if that energy were redirected? What if every complaint became a plan? What if every worry became an action? What if every excuse became a solution? Lives would change. Dreams would come alive. Potential would be unlocked. There is a powerful lesson from psychology known as the circle of influence. The concept is simple. Some things are within your control. Some things are not. Stress often comes from focusing on what cannot be controlled. Growth comes from focusing on what can. You cannot control the past, but you can control what you learn from it. You cannot control other people, but you can control your response to them. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control your effort, your attitude, your preparation, your persistence. And those things are enough, more than enough, because greatness is rarely created by controlling everything. It is created by mastering what you can control, one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one solution at a time. Years from now, you may look back on this season of your life and realize something surprising. The obstacle you feared most became the experience that strengthened you most. The setback that seemed unfair became the lesson you needed.
The challenge that nearly broke you became the reason you discovered your true strength. Many of life's blessings arrive wrapped in difficulty, but you only discover them.
So today, make a commitment. A commitment not to perfection, not to certainty, not to having all the answers. Commit to action. Commit to progress. Commit to solutions. When problems appear, and they will, refuse to give them all your attention. Acknowledge them, study them, learn from them, then get to work solving them. Do not build a home inside your difficulties. Build a bridge through them. Do not let fear make decisions for you.
So choose wisely. Choose courage over fear. Choose responsibility over excuses. Choose action over hesitation. Choose possibility over limitation. Choose solutions over problems. Because the moment you change your focus, you change your direction. And the moment you change your direction, you change your destiny. Now go forward. Face the challenge. Find the solution. Create the future. And become the person you were always capable of being. The solution is waiting. And so is your next level.